Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into one of the most incredible national makeovers of the 20th century. We're talking about how a tiny island with literally no resources became a global powerhouse, all because of one leader's radical vision for education.
So let's just set the stage for a second. Picture Singapore in 1965. It's an impoverished island, no natural resources to speak of, a population that's largely unskilled and simmering with deep ethnic divisions. Now, fast forward to today, and it's a buzzing global financial hub with a workforce that's the envy of the world. And this didn't happen slowly. We're talking about a leap from a vulnerable new state to a world-class nation in just one generation.
So that leads to the big question, right? How on earth did that happen? The secret wasn't buried in the ground. There were no oil fields or diamond mines. Nope. The answer was found in the classroom. It was all about a relentless, pragmatic focus on its people.
To really get the scale of this achievement, you've got to go back to the beginning. Let's take a look at the massive, almost impossible challenges Singapore was up against when it became independent in 1965. I mean, you have to understand, the situation in '65 was absolutely dire. The brand new nation was staring down crippling unemployment, huge parts of the population couldn't read, and you had these dangerous ethnic tensions threatening to tear the place apart. With nothing to fall back on, its very survival was on the line. This crisis really forced some incredibly tough and ultimately transformative choices. And this is where Singapore's first Prime Minister, Kuan Yew, steps onto the scene. Facing these impossible odds, he saw only one real path forward, a blueprint that was all in on cultivating the nation's only resource. His core philosophy was, when you think about it, incredibly simple, but so powerful. Lee basically bet the entire country on this one idea. Singapore's success had to be built on the skills, the drive, and the integrity of its people. With nothing else to sell to the world, Singapore was going to have to sell expertise. Now, this relentless, almost ruthless pragmatism didn't just come from nowhere. You see, his own life shaped his entire approach. Watching his family lose everything in the Great Depression taught him to always plan for the worst. The trauma of the Japanese occupation gave him this fierce drive for self-reliance. And then, his elite education at Cambridge gave him the intellectual toolkit to actually build a nation from scratch.
So, what did this blueprint actually look like in practice? Well, the very first pillar, the foundation of the whole thing, wasn't about fancy buildings or a new curriculum. It was all about the people standing at the front of the classroom.
In a speech to a group of principals way back in 1966, Lee laid out his priority with stunning clarity. He basically said that teachers were the single most decisive factor in shaping the country's future. For him, everything else came second. And, these weren't just words. He backed it up with serious action. The government built a system designed to attract the absolute best graduates into teaching, with competitive salaries. Then, they developed them with constant world-class training. And finally, they kept them by creating respected career paths. It completely professionalized teaching and made it a career people aspired to.
Okay, so the second pillar of his blueprint, this was a big one. It tackled one of the most complex, politically charged issues any multi-ethnic country has to deal with: language. In fact, this policy was so critical, so absolutely essential for holding the country together and for its economic survival that Lee personally took the wheel. He temporarily made himself Minister of Education just to make sure it was rolled out correctly. He knew they couldn't afford to get this wrong.
The strategy was twofold, and honestly pretty brilliant in its foresight. On one hand, English became the common language for everyone. It was the language of international business, science, and tech. This plugged Singapore directly into the global economy. But at the same time, every student also had to learn their mother tongue, be it Mandarin, Malay, or Tamil. This was the cultural anchor, the thing that preserved their identity and helped keep the peace. Okay, so that was the plan. It was ambitious, it was laser-focused on teachers, and a really strategic approach to language. But here's the billion-dollar question. Did it actually work? Let's take a look at the results.
Oh yeah, the results are, well, they kind of speak for themselves. In big international tests like PISA, which measures skills in math, science, and reading, Singaporean students are consistently, year after year, ranked among the top 5 in the entire world. That investment in education paid off big time. And this wasn't just about good test scores. That success in the classroom translated directly into a more prosperous and stable nation. Today, Singapore has 2 universities in the world's top 50. It's one of the safest and least corrupt places on the planet, and it's always at the top of the list for the best countries to do business in.
But if you want one stat, one number that really brings home the sheer scale of this transformation, check this out. A staggering 90% of Singaporeans own their own homes. That is one of the highest rates anywhere in the world, and it's powerful proof of an economic success that was shared widely, built squarely on the foundation of education.
But here's the thing. Lee Kuan Yew's legacy isn't just a history lesson about what they achieved in the past. It's about the strong, adaptable foundation that he built for the future.
You see, for him, it was never just education for education's sake. As he said himself, his motivation was simple. Education was always the essential tool for national survival and success. It had a clear, urgent purpose: make Singapore succeed.
And this, right here, is where you see the real genius of the system he created. It was built to evolve. The original goal was all about developing human resources just to survive economically. But today, that focus has shifted to developing human beings, creative, well-rounded people who are ready for a much more complex 21st century world.
So in the end, Lee Kuan Yew's blueprint was this incredible masterclass in national survival, and in the process, it created one of the world's best education systems. And that leaves us, all of us, with a really powerful question to think about, not just for Singapore, but for every nation. What's the right educational blueprint for a world that's moved beyond just survival and into an age of unbelievable complexity and opportunity?